to doing the computers, shortcuts, and everything like that.
Digital technology really is their medium, and it will become more so in the next 10 or 15 years. So for them to realize that this technology can be associated and connected with something that has meaning, I think is really important.
It means a lot to me to go around and document the community because I live here around this community, and I guess I want to learn more about it.
I have been living here since I was 5 years old. Since then, I never really moved farther than the boundaries of Echo Park, so you could say I've been living here my entire life. We have a map of the red cars that pass through Echo Park. We have the red cars going through Glendale Boulevard all the way down and up Park Avenue and Sunset Boulevard. I was told that I could take these red cars from here to all the way to Long Beach. When people look at the west side, I believe that the experience they're going to get is how their town is in the past and how it's now, and they're going to think of how has my town changed over the centuries, over the years.
We invited Norman Klein to come out on a video shoot and sort of a walking tour of the neighborhood with us. He's written extensively about this area, Echo Park, as well as Temple Beaudry, how that fits into the larger framework of the city of Los Angeles. This was on Carroll Avenue. It's a historic district.
This street was modeled on the Middle West. It even had special basements where you could store your apples, but they don't grow apples out here. And then it had special basements for when the tornadoes come. Have you ever been hit by a tornado?
No.
No, they don't come out here. They're in the Middle West. This was an imaginary place to make people from the Midwest feel at home. This is from about 1887. This is what that era looked like, including your neighborhood too, because this is what the houses standardly looked like, pretty much. It's pretty close to this. The only reason why this area looks like this is when they put up the freeway, they forgot it was here. They literally lost track of its existence, or else they would have surely torn these houses down.
If you're like an outsider from the East Coast, you will think, oh, this is kind of like a cheap place or something where crime goes on. But in reality, what I'm looking at is how the beauty and the beautiful kind of structures of buildings that this city has.
Los Angeles is an interesting place to do a historical project because nobody thinks that LA has a history. Looking at so many things that have happened in the past, we feel like they're really so relevant for a lot of the issues that are affecting the community right now.
From true meaning, because of television for the most part. So.
And then we can switch over. Oh, there's Fabian and Fast Promotion. So now we don't have to introduce it, right? It's so easy. But this just gives an overview of the reasons why we started this project. We started it actually exactly a year ago. This last Saturday, we actually gave a bus tour through Carroll Avenue and other sites, looking at a lot of locations that people have used in the movies. And we started this exactly a year ago. And I'm going to spend most of the time navigating and introducing it, and then Stephen also will help.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll show several of the sections pertaining to each neighborhood. We're working with kids from Belmont High School, which is close to Crown Hill or downtown Los Angeles, and Manual Arts High School, which is located in South Central Los Angeles, very close to the Coliseum. And our working theory when we started was that these two neighborhoods have undergone two similar but dissimilar processes of rejuvenation and excavation and decline, and what are some of the other adjectives for
Disaster. Absolute denial. Catastrophic
Alienation.
city failure.
Yeah. All the great things about LA. And
Should I show the intro?
Sure.
Okay.
Through the project, some of our working theories
What's
were
crucial about this project is that it not only looks at community, but looks at the culture that holds a community together. From academic history all the way to urban planning, people tend to look at the streets where the shopping goes on. They go through the Ring in Vienna, they go along the key shopping streets in London, they go through the boulevards in Paris, they talk about the big shopping streets and the fancy streets as they were or weren't, where people walk around and spend money, but where people actually live, where people actually inhabit the earth, where the actual tissue of human existence from day to day happens, where space is really produced, has almost no subject at all. And if a city like Los Angeles can find that space, then other cities around the world that are watching what Los Angeles does can begin to think that way as well. If people are willing to look at what's forgotten or erased, they should also look at what's left behind. It's about survival. It's about the actual as a cultural fact.
It showed me how to really look at the community, because before I really didn't look at it. I'll just go through and didn't look at anything. I think everything gets more interesting as you look closer.
So the trick for us at Onramp Arts was to find a way or a structure in which all these different voices in Los Angeles could participate. Obviously, the students that we're working with, ourselves at Onramp, some of the designers and artists that we consulted with, Norman Klein had quite a bit of influence on the project. And we came up with this sort of working formula or format of a 360-degree panorama. So a student would go out and shoot this 360-degree panorama, and then everything that was actually seen in the present through that panorama could then be researched, could be looked at it at a closer, deeper level. And so the result is this sort of map interface that has various locations marked by these circles. The larger ones are sort of spaces that are common to a group, and the smaller spaces are those that pertain to individual students.
And actually, for people in my class, we're thinking a lot right now about interface as a metaphor, and obviously this is a map, we didn't have to think about that too much, but the idea of the project is being from multiple perspectives, and trying to get rid of trying to organize it too much, and just letting that actually be the interface for it. So for each one, this is at 91st and Vermont, and we had sort of divided them up into areas that are either historical or the present.
This was a year-long project. We were meeting Friday and Saturday every day,
By
or Friday and
1935,
Saturday
LA
every
was
week.
second to Akron in railroad production with Firestone, Goodyear, and Goodrich. Second to Detroit in auto production. Black people were mostly denied access to these high-wage industrial jobs. Industrial conversion took a lot of black homes. With housing restrictions based on race, people were left with very few options for places to live. In fact, there was a 98% occupancy rate in South Central Los Angeles.
So we're going to cut each other off as we show this.
So these 360-degree panoramas then became sort of these collections of information. And we did not come to this format immediately. It sort of developed through the project. So Jess, do you want to take a look at...
So this is looking north more towards 87th.
For those of you that don't know the neighborhoods in South Central, this is on 91st Street, which is probably 3 or 4 miles south of the Coliseum.
Summer of '65. Lost riot. I was 19. State troopers sticking guns in my face were on the west side, and basically it was like all the homeboys from the east side going west. They stopped the riot at Crenshaw. They stopped them from going any farther than that. If you know of Westwood today, that's what the Crenshaw area was then. All those businesses moved out after the riot of '65. Influx into the valley. It's sad to say that race had to play a major part of the mobility of the city.
This is actually that same block, but from an aerial perspective that was then burned out in the '92 riots. And I actually had a pretty amazing moment the other day. That was Ulysses Jenkins, who's a video professor at UC Irvine, who grew up in South Central and South Los Angeles and now lives in Inglewood. And I was showing this to Michael Cho, who made the documentary, and he had actually filmed this same block right like the day after they were all burned down. And we were comparing the two panoramas and actually figured out that it was exactly the same block. So it's kind of a great moment.
Let's take a look real quickly, Jess, at...
You want to look at my notes?
let's...
I just wanted to start south because we never show this as much.
Well, we also don't have students that represent manual arts here with us tonight, so I'm going to kind of stand in for some of their pieces. Let's look at the corner of Figueroa, and Martin Luther King.
I don't know. Well, can you read this for our online viewing audience?
Martin Luther King Boulevard, formerly titled Santa Barbara Avenue, has undergone drastic economic and architectural revision, starting with the 1992 riots and continuing with the increased globalization into the 21st century. Early in the 20th century, the intersection of Santa Barbara Avenue and Figueroa featured a large theater and the Hotel Coliseum, replaced today by fast food, gas stations, and mini malls. This was sort of a common panorama, I guess you could say, where many students worked on it. It became so apparent in taking a look at this intersection today and then looking at what was there beforehand that it had gone through this drastic process of revision that you would never imagine as you're actually looking at it today. This is the Hotel Coliseum, this beautiful hotel on the corner, real close to the Coliseum.
So this is the same intersection, but just looking south instead of north. And, well, we actually have quite a few of these. These are old maps from the Sanborn fire insurance. So actually, if you're ever curious of what used to be where you were, you can go to the library and actually find either by neighborhood or street or number maps of any given area. So this is where the panorama was. So you can actually figure out stuff that was there before. That was one of the ways that we first started working on the project.
The Sanborn Maps are a fire insurance map that was sort of in every city they would do these Sanborn Maps. And they're this kind of recollection or record of what these communities actually looked like schematically.
The heart of the city started to have its focus around that area based on affluence and looking at the history of USC. The community of manual arts was one of the demarcation communities for students coming out of manual going directly into USC. If you look at the community around there, you can see the Victorian homes, you can see the traces of class community that supported these educational institutions.
One of the amazing things that's happened in South Central Los Angeles, especially after the 1992 riots, is it wasn't replaced by a spirit of community or community businesses. It was replaced by McDonald's and Chevron gas stations. So it went from trauma, the 1992 riots, directly into globalization without any space whatsoever. So, you know, there's always this talk of revitalizing a neighborhood or a depressed neighborhood. Well, in fact, that's not what's going on at all. You're just giving a location to a global entity, essentially. And so it offers a service economy, but that's essentially the extent of it.
Of what has happened. Quite frankly, we had thought right along that if an acquittal verdict came down on all four of these officers, that there'd probably be some isolated incidents. But really, because we knew that not everybody, even though we would like to have been able to persuade everybody to buy into the peaceful approach, we knew that there's a lot of frustration and anger out there, and that not everybody was necessarily buy into it, and not everybody would be at the first day of each church. So we recognized that, but frankly, this kind of thing, this indiscriminate burning, and now this is a tragic example of integration. I mean, this is not just something to be laid at the doorsteps of a few African American youth. I mean, they're white youth, and it's not just confined to one part of the city. This is a terrible tragedy.
That was at that section. We actually had to go through, I don't know if he's here, Tony Castillo. We had a lot of interns from UCLA through Oxbridge. Raimundo, are you here? Yay, Raimundo's here. Anyway, Tony was the one that actually had to go help people capture this footage, and there was like 10 days of round-the-clock footage of riots looking for like this one neighborhood, you know. All right.
Just let's take a look at Manual Arts real quickly. I taught at Manual Arts for 4 years. Recently finished my stint at Manual Arts, and it's this amazing high school that was one of the original high schools in Los Angeles. There was LA High, Central High, and Manual Arts High School. And Manual Arts was the school that you would go to if you're interested in a trade. And at the turn of the century, there was a real division between sort of an academic track and a more labor-oriented track. And it has this really rich history of being a school that served the community for all these different economic sectors.
It's also the alma mater of Jackson Pollock and Philip Guston, which is kind of interesting. And recently, I don't know if anybody got to read the introduction, it's gone through 2 different architectural modes. This one that's standing right now is from the 1930s. It's a classic Art Deco design. So a lot of these, this one actually has a lot of content in it because the students from Manual Arts mostly focused on the school, and most of the imagery that we were using was from yearbooks. Just sort of comparing how it is now with how it used to be.
LA Unified School District, as many people know, has not done particularly well at building new schools. So most students occupied these schools from the turn of the century. I mean, Belmont High School, Manual Arts High School, LA High, and they have these sort of architectural revisions every decade or so, but it's essentially the same school campus. And a school that was built for 1,500 students now houses close to 5,000 students. And so there's this huge overcrowding problem, but these buildings, you know, they were built to last, and so they still are actually standing.
So what's now the parking lot that everybody parks on used to be this beautiful grounds that people used to relax and do their homework on.
A lot of the project is about a certain loss, and specifically a loss of greenness or of greenery in space. I mean, it's amazing how much concrete we've actually put up as you take a close look. But there's also these really surprising moments throughout the project that are you know, real gems.
This is the auto shop class of 1911. Here's the agricultural farming class that then also relates to like the panorama that we started off with, thinking of South Central as mostly farming and agriculture.
At the turn of the century, South Central Los Angeles, and actually most of Los Angeles, was one big huge farm. And it's a perfect venue to
Exciting gym class here.
put freeways on top of.
Is the Bungalow City, is that on this one?
Yes.
That one's so amazing. I think it's
There's
on the main one.
There's an inner campus at Manual Arts High School called Bungalow City. It was this kind of garden paradise that you could attend class. Of course, that's completely gone at this point. It's one big huge slab of cement. But it's kind of interesting now. There's a fair amount of attention and money that's being directed towards movement or movements centered around the Los Angeles River. And so there is this kind of reawakening of kind of a walking sensibility about Los Angeles.
This is the first structure that was put up that was then destroyed in a fire. So that's why the front looks different. And there were some surprises. This is imagery that some students found in
the whole genre of minstrelsy was entertainment device that people like the Ringling Brothers, or P.T. Barnum rather, established a part of the whole vaudevillian context of representation for African American people back in those days. It was a misrepresentation. Barnum and Bailey had witnessed certain kinds of activities that black people engaged in the South, and he took them totally out of context and created these minstrel shows. So basically, the history of the minstrel was the misrepresentation of African Americans, but the crazy thing about it is that when black people wanted to try to get into the theatrical community, they too had to put on blackface, cork on their faces, and paint their lips white to look like these characters. In other words, they couldn't just come in as themselves, naturally dark-skinned people. It had to be the type.
Manual Arts has this phenomenal collection of yearbooks dating back literally from the 1910s and 19-teens, and it's just amazing to look through these books. The topography, the photographs, the history, they're just really, really stunning. This is actually the original structure. They tore the structure down and then put up the streamlined deco building in the 1930s.
Also, we documented a little bit of Vermont Avenue based on the yearbooks. And a lot of this has changed dramatically also. You can tell buildings that are original versus ones that were taken down in the riots. And they're so classic, kind of Southern California. Comparing some of these are advertisements that were in their yearbooks that we mapped on, like this photo studio was at that location.
So our most immediate source of information was these yearbooks. I mean, they're just a phenomenal collection for this area, and we really, really utilized those as much as we could to kind of describe this historical sense.
Because there was so much less, like this area doesn't have a historical society looking out for it. You can tell like there was some attempt here to make it look a little bit Victorian, maybe not so successful. But all sense of what happened here or what this area was like to live in is pretty much lost without having a sense of what people were doing and what the local economy was and who lived there.
So Jess, should we take a look at some of the Belmont pieces?
Yeah, let me just show this one piece because it's kind of amazing too.
Restrictive clauses on residential property deeds appeared in the 1920s. By the mid-20s, black residents were moving into newer suburbs as far as Lawson. Neighborhood resistance confined it there until World War II. In the same decade, a growing black middle class expanded its residential concentration from West Jefferson to West Adams. The dynamics of black expansion aroused alarm about declining property values among older homeowners. In response to these perceived threats, Residents so effectively barricaded their blocks against minority intrusion through restrictive covenants that by the end of the decade, 70% of the black minority found itself confined to an increasingly congested area north of Slauson in a long strip centered on Central Avenue. A number of homeowners were seriously contemplating leaving. They confessed that a leading consideration was the approach of blacks and Japanese who they feared will lower their property values as well as lower their social standing. Concerned discussions led to petition circulation, meetings, and a formal organization known as the University District Property Owners Association, which drew up a legal document restricting the sale, rental, or occupancy of property to any non-Caucasian. Pressure was applied to property owners to sign the agreement and file it as a legal amendment to the property deeds, that no part of any of said lots or parcels or land shall ever at any time be sold or rented to any person other than that of the white or Caucasian race.
If you could read, it says at the bottom that these were not outlawed until 1948. So it's a lot of surprises. Nobody really thinks of South Central as a restricted whites-only neighborhood, but that is its history. And this connects to the Coliseum. Ben?
Was that followed strictly until 1948? Or was it one of those laws that kind of fell to the west?
That was actually something that people would have to sign as they purchased property. So that they were pressured into actually signing that as they purchased property in that neighborhood.
Yeah. But I think what Ben's asking is, to what degree in the 1940s did that actually take place?
It wasn't enforced by the city of Los Angeles.
Mike Davis talks about this in City of Courts to a certain degree, this idea of white flight. And from what I can gather in doing some reading is that it was a relatively gradual process, but these were definitely on the books, and there was a point in time where it was pretty serious business.
Oh, we don't have his name on that. Oh, yeah, this is the terrible thing. The Osborne States in Minnesota.
This is one of the students from Manual Arts High School, Salvador Rivera. This is at the corner of where he lives.
Actually, both of these guys were, like the U-Haul is like the center of their neighborhood. It marks it for everybody else that just drives by. And I think you guys have seen, I showed this one in class, it's a demo. And it has the same idea of, this one's all text, revealing things that you wouldn't normally know. Together, if there was a connection between the uncle and the tree, or it just came out. All right, so we're moving up now towards downtown, and in doing this, there was a lot of stuff that we had found also in downtown. We decided to keep it. There's some pieces that are in Chinatown. She couldn't actually come out. We wanted people to focus on what was close to their neighborhood, what they were familiar with. But we wanted to keep it outside of downtown and west of the 110. Where should we start? Let's start with...
I'm going to go ahead and hand off the microphone to some of...
Actually, you know what? There's this wireless one there.
Oh, there's a wireless one? Okay.
That's easier.
Okay. Jesse, you want to come up and talk about yours real quick?
This isn't her.
Oh, okay.
We're getting
Wait.
there.
Okay.
So this is an area called Crown Hill, and it's interesting because there used to be a lot like, as you know, I took a lot of Victorians. This is the last one that is still in existence, and in the 1970s, the city of LA wanted to propose a new downtown and leveled it without having actual plans in place, and so nothing ever happened, so it's just leveled. So if you go there now, you'll see lots of stairs that kind of lead nowhere. So it's kind of this, and there are people that live there. It's almost like an abandoned park. Jesse, you want to talk about the day we went into this place?
The girls' home.
This is a historic residence for girls, and we went in there. It's one of the few historic buildings left. What were they doing the day that we were there?
They were gonna make a movie or something, or a commercial. So this is the library there, I guess. The special room they have, and it's really nice with the stained glass windows. And this is right across Belmont High School. So I never knew what was inside there until I went in.
I don't think any of us knew what was inside there. It's kind of an amazing treat.
So Jesse, kids at Belmont High School, do they talk about this building? I mean, is it sort of...
No.
It's just kind of, yeah, you would never even... It's so strange. I mean, when you actually consider the building itself, you're like, wow, this thing's an amazing building. But it gets caught up in sort of this competing atmosphere of the neighborhood, doesn't it?
Yeah, they always film movies.
Yeah.
They always see movies.
So you see a lot of this, like stairs that kind of, there used to be a house there, but it doesn't exist anymore.
Why would a city need a skyline without any natural barrier that makes a skyline necessary? In other words, Paris doesn't have a skyline. Why? Because Paris doesn't have any natural boundary. San Francisco and New York have skylines. Why? Because there's water there stopping it. So why would you put a skyline in the middle of a basin, sprawling for hundreds of miles in every direction? Exactly why do you need a skyline? The architect who was working for the CRA back in the 80s and the 90s really liked Blade Runner, so he thought that the idea of putting the signage high across all these buildings would generate a kind of Blade Runner look.
Oh, that was inspired? Oh my God.
Now I don't know which came first, the signage, the Blade Runner, or some delusional moment on his part.
We went on a few walking tours with Norman Klein at the helm. Very,
This is actually kind of an amazing map that we got on the volunteer firefighters website. They have an incredible collection of maps and lithographs. And it's kind of a strange one because a lot of the streets have changed. But this is right around where Belmont High School is. From 1870.
we try to get information from anywhere and everywhere: library, personal archives, photograph collections. Each sort of discovery would lead into another discovery.
Jesse, you want to read the intro?
Yeah. A present view of Belmont High School reveals its staggered history. Unlike manual arts, a campus essentially rebuilt from ground up in the 1930s, Belmont architectural revision thrust into each other. The original entrance to the west leads to the 1930s streamlined rotunda on the southeast corner, giving away the modernist monolith facing south that is now the shockingly overcrowded home of Belmont's 5,000 plus students.
Actually, we had this today. We couldn't make a 360 because we couldn't figure out what is the front of Belmont. And even today, I was like, now what's the front? Where do we pick you guys up? Because there's this side, which is the front, but it's actually in the back from the older part. And there's this part, which is the side, I guess, of the older part. And there's this part. So they're all a little bit different.
Marisela Sanchez, I go to Belmont High School.
Before there used to be a lot of gangsters. Now the police have been around more. They don't let the gangsters come here to Belmont. They try to avoid that as much as they can. It's cleaner, people clean now, and they take care more of the area, all the neighbors. I saw that they try to clean the Echo Park Lake for the people who visit it.
This is the history of Belmont High School. It used to be a hotel and burned down in the 1870s.
It's a very famous LA fire, apparently. Very, very dramatic.
I'm waiting for someone to bust us on the actual chronological order because it's hard to tell. This is then a women's home. So it first opened in 1923 with 500 students.
So, Jesse, do you know how many students go to Belmont High School now?
5,000.
5,000.
Yeah,
So,
that's all together with all the tracks, A,
Yeah.
B, and C track.
Right.
Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know, LA Unified, most of the schools at this point are on a track system. So and there's 3 tracks. There's an A, B, and C track. So at any given time, there's 2 tracks on and 1 track off. So this allows for more students to attend the campus, obviously. It's a year-round schedule.
I think it's the ones that you guys did. Beverly Boulevard. Candy, do you want to come up and introduce this one? Actually, you guys should both stay here because we'll then go to yours.
Yeah. This intersection is really interesting because it's a business area and you always see these stores that are closing or barely starting. It's rebirth and destruction at the same time.
And this is, how close, how come you chose this spot?
Well, it's really close because when I used to go to Belmont last year, every time I used to walk around this area, and it kind of was interesting because every time, like before, there used to be a 99-cent store, so if you go around, and before, when I took this picture, it was abandoned, but now it changed. It's now a smogging check, and if you, it's crazy. And then if you scroll more,
left or right?
Yeah, right. Then it turn this side, put the right, yeah, around there. Yeah, around there, it's now a 98-cent store. So it changes. It's weird.
So the 99 cents always comes back. Even if
Yeah.
it's very bad, it comes back. Let me actually go around to some of your other sections.
And this is close to my house. It's an elementary right there.
I think one of the things that happened in the project was this idea of looking at these things that are so pedestrian, and we really shouldn't be paying attention to this information. This is stuff that we're not supposed to pay attention to, yet here's a project that actually does do that.
I think there's too many medical centers and there's a lot of liquor, so I think they should have like an art store or something, because the art stores are really far away. Yeah, instead of a McDonald's or Burger King, they should make a family restaurant. Most of the buildings are there. I think some of them are abandoned, and they're pretty big, so they should make something for the community, like another Onramp or something.
And this links to Jesse's. Everybody they chose one spot, and actually these guys did a lot because they're so hardcore, dedicated.
So I chose this spot because, well, it's where I live, like a block away, and I've never gone through it. So I thought it was interesting, and it looks all scary in the night because it's so dark and it has no lights.
It's really deserted. Some kids walk through there, but not a lot of people. At night, it's really dark in there, and it's just really lonely. And I think it's interesting because we could find a lot of things in alleys.
Find a lot of things. Like what?
Homeless people.
is starting looking at the backside of whoever's house that is. We then move to the front. And I want to get also to your, you guys did an interior.
Yeah.
That was really great. It's this way, right?
Yeah, it's right there. This is the kitchen. It's like the dining room, I guess, where everybody eats, and that's the living room.
Sometimes police officers come to your house and they tell you all, tell us if there's any drug problems here or come here and arrest them or help you guys. But those are the friendly officers.
This is all about the main ones.
So I know that my mom is really proud of me in this citizen now. She always wanted to be a citizen. She thinks it's a lot of opportunities for her. She was really happy to go and vote for her first time.
Jumps you back to candies.
We actually had quite a few more panoramas that were completed that are not online. It got to a point where there was so much information that we really had to stick with those pieces that were the most fleshed out.
What's interesting also in looking at how everybody did theirs, different themes come up. People are interested in what they perceive is very different. And like Rocio's, this is like the disaster corner. If bad things happen, people jump out of this bush. Some drivers get into car accidents. Another accident. I'm going to go a little bit down to Belmont Tunnel. We're working our way north. We have 3 different videos of this. Michelle and Raimundo, I hope he's still here, is in one of them. We'll just do it chronologically because it's interesting that way. This has been filmed a lot and sort of a infamous...
In the late teens in Los Angeles, the people who owned the trolley system, because it was privately held, asked the city, essentially, would you please buy it from us? Because they had unguarded rights of way. That meant that the traffic from cars was beginning to intrude. They had made a fortune in real estate investments. They were not in the business of making money from public transportation because that wasn't true anyway. It wasn't possible. So to show the city what was possible, when the city at first refused to try and get the city of Los Angeles to accept 2 cents more per ride, from 5 cents to 7 cents, they said, well, we will show you what we can build. They built a little spur from downtown feeding out into this hole right here. And that was a subway. The city of Los Angeles was not impressed. They took it, I believe, to the state Supreme Court and made certain that it stayed at 5 cents a ride. The people who owned the trolleys then basically said, forget it, pal, we're not building anything else. And they slowly sucked vampirically from the trolley system until eventually it was then offered through some sort of strange consortium of General Motors and Firestone in the 50s, and the city of Los Angeles effectively voted its transportation system out of existence. So this is a very odd monument. It's a monument that's particularly odd since the hole that went in there was also built through while they were planning the subway. So they were planning a subway while they were destroying the subway that could have been here by allowing various other constructions to be put either on top of it or around it. The cost of replacing this hole has been something in the area of $500 million. And the subway that now goes through pretty much the same cycle has been more or less a failure. In fact, more and more a failure. and so that they had not only the potential for a working system, something they could have salvaged, but something that's been a continual embarrassment to them. The hope has been that no one will notice it, that no one will care. However, there are inklings now that there may be some pressure to simply convert it to something or another. No one quite knows what. We'll have to find out more. And then not only will it be gone, but what it stands for will be gone, and what it forgot to deliver will be gone. So there's so much, in addition to the people just playing here, so much has not been provided for these areas. It's a painful and wonderful reminder of the vitality of a city that has lived, shall we say, in the shadow of neglect.
We're standing at what is commonly called the Belmont Tunnel. Currently, and for I would say about the last 15 years, it's been used as a graffiti yard, off and on by pretty much the LA graffiti scene, and a lot of visiting international graffiti artists have painted these walls many times. And it oscillates between being semi-legal, being a totally illegal act to paint here. Sometimes the cops don't bother with you, sometimes they do. But it's more recently it's become a playing field, a sports field for an interesting game that is played here on the weekends. And I've heard it referred to as Aztec soccer. So this place has a lot of history in a lot of different ways. It has a history in the arts of LA, it has an history in the transportation of LA, and before the graffiti and before the abandonment of the transportation system here.
Andrew Yang was from here in urban planning, came with us on that shoot. So you guys want to see inside the tunnel? You can actually go inside. They used to have it closed off, but I think it's been open.
I think if they build a Blade Runner theme park, this might work.
This might pop in there.
This entire area above us, a lot of it was redlined by insurance companies, and effectively speaking, it was frozen, awaiting new development. It's also important to understand that places like Bunker Hill were also unbuilt for quite a long time. The LA oil field was huge, am I correct?
This is correct, and it was discovered right out in front of this tunnel.
Yes, and so I would say that it's fair that within a kilometer in any direction, there are approximately 500 oil wells that were here. And there were pipes through there, pipes. So this is ventilation.
Yeah.
So there's obviously no, you have this whole issue of ventilation. This has experienced every earthquake since 1933. Right. The 33 earthquake, the 70 earthquake, the 94 earthquake, and then also the 87 earthquake. It's gone through all of them. This place should be just about ready to crash down on us. What is that?
Yeah.
Things growing through it?
Yeah, it looks actually roots. Yeah, those are roots.
Wow.
Yeah.
So some trees that have grown through it.
Yeah. That was. Do you know what this looks like?
In Rome, in the 14th, 15th century, that they went down there to the grottos, and that was the generation of what they call the grotesque, which is the generation of the word grotesque. And the whole history of
Gothic paranoia has to do with shapes like that.
Really?
Really? That's one thing, right? And who said LA is not a hip place, right? Who said it's not that? Well, people would look at these and they'd find human figures inside them. Or they'd find Jesus and Mary, and they'd find the devil's friends and the devil's enemies. They'd find. They're, oh, there they are. There they are. There they are.
They're here again.
How do you go now?
Like in reddish.
So it actually goes in for, what do you think, like a mile?
It's about a mile and almost a mile and a half.
Yeah, so you can actually go in, and if you were able to walk through it, the student that was there with us is actually proposing a future of Belmont to actually open it up as a pedestrian walkway to connect what is the financial district of downtown with Echo Park. All right. Let's move up. Monica, can we have you read yours?
Monica and Jesse are still going to Belmont High School, and you're seniors now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jesse, you're 11th grade?
No, I'm a senior.
You're a senior.
Can I read it? Okay, I chose this street because I walk through here every day and I know most of the people around this area. I have a lot of friends in this area and they would agree with me that this is a great neighborhood. What makes it great is the people, the diversity of cultures, and the history, and the place itself. So that's the place.
Monica, you want to stand over here so they can, yeah. This is very close to where Onramp's located right now.
Yeah, we're about a block away from here. So this is the inside of everybody's favorite. And no, we didn't get money from Lay's. We're thinking maybe we should ask them. We're featuring their product so prominently in this.
It's a day back.
And Monica, do you want to explain how you got this image? Remember it was a Don.
Yeah, one of the other students working on this found this in an old yearbook at Belmont, and it used to be a pharmacy before.
This is the 101 freeway.
And a lot of the images, we had another UCLA ArtsBridge person that had worked with us a lot was Greg Williams in architecture, and really helping people to look closely at what was evident in their panorama. So for this, we were looking at the fence, or learning the different terms for architectural styles that were evident. Do you want to read this one?
Okay, these are new apartments made to look like the Victorian houses in Angelino Heights. I have a lot of friends that live here. They say that while it is a nice place to live, the complex is so large that it feels like a big maze. That's an elementary school.
This is sort of a design flaw of the buttons. Is that you have to read and move your mouse so you can read the words. But I'm not fixing it, so you just have to deal with it. This is the trolley that used to go along right there on Temple, and this is actually coming towards downtown. It's just so amazing. Seeing a lot of these barren. This is Carroll Avenue, and do you want to read this one too, Monica?
Okay, the neighborhood has survived practically intact. 75% looks as it did 50 years ago. Virtually no buildings have been lost except through fire, and it is undergoing a variety of restorations since it contains the highest concentration of Victorian homes in Los Angeles, and another 300 architecturally significant craftsman wood frames all within only 6 square blocks.
I think you guys are standing too close to each other.
Okay.
Back off, man.
I lived in a house that had a special cellar that was used generally for curing apples. It was called a root cellar. And then also had a special roof for the snow, because one never knows. If you come from Iowa or Southern Illinois, anything could happen, you know, just because it's LA. And they simply were used to these kinds of phenomena. They needed to feel at home. So what we basically are looking at is a city that was already simulating the world before the movies came, as part of a kind of real estate imaginary. So LA, shall we say, was a postmodern city before it even became a city, appropriating and marketing things. You might say,
Oh, I cut him off. Let's go too fast. LA was Vegas in the 1870s.
you have to imagine that these areas were supposed to make Middle West people feel comfortable. So that's a widow's walk. The idea of a widow's walk is that a sea widow, waiting for her husband who had shipped out to come home, would have a special entrance in the roof for her binoculars to watch the ships coming in through the Great Lakes. However, if you're in the middle of the desert, the hottest part of the roof is exactly where the widow's walk would be. So why do you need a widow's walk in order to stare in the desert at nothing but watching the dust blow in? Maybe it's just an interesting form of suicide. You go there, you get sunstroke, you roll down, you crash to the bottom of the house, and you're gone, right?
Have any questions as I'm showing this? I know it's actually now been an hour, and I feel like we've only looked at half the project, which is like kind of amazing. And it took forever to actually compile this as a project. And I kept thinking, why is this taking so long? Once we had actually finished, it ended up being over 140 movies. So that's why that's taking so long.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and open up to any questions that you might have about the project, or the process, or where we go from here, those kind of issues.
Other ones that we have on here, some pretty amazing ones from Chinatown, Echo Park Lake, and also the scandals of Amy Semple McPherson, looking at Sunset Boulevard and some of the businesses that are around there, looking at Dodger Stadium. This was actually sort of a low-income, mostly Mexican neighborhood that was torn down in the 1950s to actually make Dodger Stadium. Elysian Park.
This project is online at our website, which is www.onramparts.org.
Let me show this one because it's so amazing.
Okay.
There's like a million things that I think are so amazing. This was one that we started each one with a map, and her map in Chinatown. Chinatown was originally more downtown where the Union Station is. So her map actually showed mostly oil rigs, and on this one a cemetery that doesn't exist now. So we said, well, Crystal, you're going to have to go figure out what's there. And this is the story.
When the Hollywood Freeway came in, they had to tear part of the school down. Yes, I went to junior high school there at Central, and years ago that used to be a graveyard. And when they were putting lights, make a playground at night, and they were digging the trenches to put the electrical conduits in, they uncovered a lot of bones and caskets up in the yard. With a baseball, there was a cemetery. In fact, there was a tomb there, that they couldn't, because of some ruling in the law, that when the tomb was built, they couldn't tear it down. Also, where Central Junior High School is, the early part of the century, that was the original Los Angeles High School.
So like interviews like with that, and he also talks a lot about the oil and Chavez Ravine. He was a neighbor of hers who had seen all of this stuff. So it was kind of amazing. And I think in starting this, we didn't even know like what we were going to uncover when we started it. It's like, wow, here's this map. Oh my God, it's where LA Unified Headquarters is. Oh my God, here's the man that can tell us the story of like remembering them tearing up bones and stuff like that. So it's kind of amazing. And I want to bring this up too. We've shown this a couple different places. This is the last stop, so now we can take a breather. We actually have some of the panoramas as prints in our space, and then we also had a show of that. And a lot of people worked on this project.
Quite a few UCLA interns.
Quite a few indeed, mostly from design. And a lot of people consulting as commentary or providing us with imagery or whatnot. So, what do you guys want to do? Any questions? I didn't show Edgar's one at Echo Park Lake, but I just didn't want to be keeping this here all night.
You guys have tons of content here, a huge team. How did you go about trying to find funds to put the project into action together? I mean, I assume there's some grants involved.
Actually, let's go back to the credits page. We did receive some funding for the project. Initially, we wrote it for the Cultural Affairs Department, Los Angeles Cultural Affairs Department. They have a grant. It's called the Youth Art Services Grant. It's a yearly offering, and it's not a lot of money, but it was enough to get the project started. And then we did a UC Institute for Research in the Arts, which is a great grant that works with faculty on community projects. And
so that allowed us to actually invite people in, and it paid for like the brochure, the handout that we got printed up. Truthfully speaking, though, I mean, we made this. Like, it was laughable what we made this for. It really became a labor of love. Stephen and I, in terms of creating it, just did it because we were really interested in it. And then once we had all this stuff, we were like obliged to put it all on. And there was stuff that we, like Stephen said, we didn't put on just because we thought we were going to die if we put more stuff on.
It's also we were working.
Well, like Linda Wyman let me go to one of the conferences for free, and so that's a way of support that then we could figure out, like, oh, this is how you can wrap around the panoramas. And ArtsBridge provided us with interns that helped, so that we didn't have to pay everybody in terms of working on it.
We also worked with a really great group of kids, so a lot of the work that we would actually, there was a certain energy that really fed the project all the way throughout.
It's really amazing the kids do these panoramic shots and grass and this, but it's really a nice job.
Yeah, and they did all the photography, all the sound recording, all the interviews, a lot of the historical, it was like this investigation. And looking at the map itself, some of the areas are more communal, like Echo Park Lake. Actually, Edgar, you live right by Echo Park Lake.
Yes.
But some areas like Belmont Learning Complex, we did that even though nobody lives near it. It was such an issue at the time that collectively we just went in as a group and did it. Anybody else? The holdouts. Do you want to see more? Do we end?
I think we're ready. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being with us.
Let me just show you our site. We just got, oops, I'm sorry. Oh, I can't beat it.
You going to show the new fire station?
Yeah, just so you can get a sense. In the documentary that we started off with, it was on our old space, which was a total nightmare, hole in the wall. And now we're in this beautiful fire station that has sat vacant for like 10 years. And we have a little image of our lab inside.
So this is the current lab right here.
So we started Onramp literally with 2 broken quadras, $10,000, and a bunch of books. and this dump of a space that was like leaking, and like if you touch the walls, they would be soft. So we've like really tried growing it from there, and actually we just got a bunch of new stations, courtesy very much of this department, talking to Apple. This is another project that some students at Manual Arts did, looking at Slauson. So it's the idea of the organization is to do creative projects like this that are collaborative from people from many different backgrounds and perspectives, and to actually use technology in an interesting way that is specific to cultural issues and creative issues. And that's our plug. So thank you guys for
Thanks so much.
sitting and